Mom, who was the man in the hallway? Emma asked, her voice trembling. Samantha's heart skipped a beat. What man, sweetheart? Emma pointed to the door. The one with the blue mask. He was standing there, watching us. Welcome back to Creepy Crep, your home for spine-chilling stories and hair-raising mysteries. Today, we dive into the eerie tale of Samantha Clark and her family's harrowing experience in Maplewood, Canada. If you enjoy tales that send shivers down your spine, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our community of horror enthusiasts. Now, let's step into the shadows of Maplewood House. Maplewood, Canada, a charming, picturesque town nestled amidst dense forests and serene lakes. Samantha Clark and her two delightful children, Emma and Noah, moved here seeking a fresh start after the tragic demise of her husband. They were drawn to the town by an old Victorian house, known locally as Maplewood House, a towering structure with Gothic architecture and ivy-covered walls. It was an embodiment of history and character. Despite the whispered warnings from the townsfolk about its troubled past, Samantha saw potential in its aged beauty. But the peace was not to last. From the first night, strange occurrences began to unfold. It started subtly, the sensation of being watched, fleeting shadows in the corners of their eyes, and doors that seemed to open and close on their own accord. One evening, as Samantha tucked Emma and Noah into bed, "Mom, who was the man in the hallway?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. Samantha's heart skipped a beat. "What man, sweetheart?" Emma pointed to the door. The one with the blue mask. He was standing there, watching us. Samantha dismissed it as a child's imagination, but a cold unease settled deep in her bones. The house creaked and groaned as if it were alive. One night, Samantha woke to a faint, rhythmic tapping sound. Intrigued and a tad unnerved, she followed the noise to the attic, where she discovered an old chest. Inside were faded photographs and newspaper clippings about Jack Miras, a local legend known as Eyelessjack. The articles recounted Jack's transformation into a terrifying entity after a failed cult ritual. Samantha shivered as she read about his eyeless mask and the black liquid that dripped from his sockets. Absurd as the story seemed, the fear it instilled was palpably real. Samantha decided to keep the strange occurrences to herself, not wanting to alarm her children. However, the situation escalated when Noah woke up one morning with a strange mark on his arm, a small surgical incision that had been flawlessly sewn up. Terrified, Samantha rushed Noah to the hospital, but the doctors were baffled. They couldn't explain how the incision had been made without waking Noah or why it had healed so quickly. The mystery deepened along with Samantha's dread. Desperation drove Samantha to seek help from the local historian, Mr. Thompson, a man well-versed in the town's dark secrets. He confirmed her worst fears. Maplewood House had a troubled history linked to numerous disappearances and strange occurrences over the decades. Jack Miras, or Eyelessjack, was a well-known legend in the area, often spoken of in hushed tones as a cautionary tale to keep children from wandering too far from home. Mr. Thompson handed her a journal written by a previous occupant of the house, detailing his encounters with Jack. The entries spoke of psychological torment, whispered threats, and the constant feeling of being watched. It became clear that Jack's power was not just physical, but deeply psychological. Determined to uncover more, Samantha dove into the history of the house and Jack Miras. Days were spent in the town library, combing through old records. One evening, she found a chilling account from a family who lived there in the 1980s. Their youngest son had nightmares and spoke of a man with no eyes who visited him at night. The family eventually fled the house, leaving all their belongings behind. A pattern emerged. Each family experienced similar events, strange noises, fleeting shadows, and inexplicable markings on their bodies. The stories were eerily similar, each ending with the family fleeing in terror. Desperation drove Samantha to seek professional help. She managed to schedule a call with a team of paranormal investigators for the next day. They promised to investigate the phenomenon plaguing Maplewood House and help her rid the house of the malevolent entity. Samantha felt a glimmer of hope. Finally, there was a chance for relief from the relentless horror that had taken over their lives. That night, she went to bed with a sense of cautious optimism, hoping for a normal life once more. For the first time in many nights, Samantha found herself dreaming peacefully. She dreamt of her late husband, his comforting presence filling her with a warmth she had missed dearly. But as she moved closer to him, his face began to change, as if something was boiling just beneath his skin. Slowly, the familiar and beloved face of her husband twisted into the nightmarish visage of Eyelessjack. Samantha woke up abruptly, drenched in sweat and heart pounding. She tried to sit up to grab some water, but a horrifying realization dawned upon her. She couldn't move. Her body was paralyzed, and a cold dread settled over her. Struggling to open her eyes, she was met with the terrifying sight of Jack standing above her. The black liquid dripped from where his eyes should have been, his presence menacing and oppressive. Samantha's heart raced, but she was unable to scream or call for help. The room was filled with an eerie silence, broken only by the steady drip of the black liquid. The following morning, Samantha and her children were nowhere to be found. The neighbors noticed the stillness of the house, and when they received no response, they called the authorities. The police found the house eerily empty, with no signs of struggle or a forced exit. It was as if the family had simply vanished into thin air. The only clue left behind was Samantha's phone, still connected to the missed call from the paranormal investigators. Ah, dear reader, Samantha and her children disappeared from Maplewood that night, never to return. Years later, the house stood empty, its dark history forgotten by most. The townspeople whispered about the strange light that had been seen coming from the house that night, but no one knew what had really happened. The house was eventually put up for sale, and a new family moved in, blissfully unaware of its dark past. As they unpacked their belongings, they felt a chill in the air. The youngest child looked up at the window and gasped. "Mom, who's that man in the window?" he asked. His mother turned to look and saw a figure standing in the window, staring out at them. It was Jack, his eyeless mask dripping with black liquid, a sinister smile playing on his lips. In a quiet corner of Maplewood, the old Victorian house stood empty once more. The townspeople whispered about its haunted past, and children dared each other to get close. The legend of Eyelessjack lived on, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurked just beyond the veil of everyday life. Samantha and her children were never to be seen again, but the memory of those eyeless sockets and the dark, dripping liquid would haunt the house forever. And somewhere in the darkness, Jack waited, his presence a constant shadow over the town of Maplewood. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and join us for more terrifying stories on Creepy Crep. Stay spooky.